Aloha, beautiful, and welcome to the Woman Unleashed online retreat. My name is Amber Kuile Mailani Benici, and I'm your retreat host. And I'm just sending you lots of love and welcome today as we tap into some deep, amazing, intuitive stuff. I was just talking to Lou. Say hi, Lou.
Hi, everybody.
So I was just talking to Lou before I hit record. Just about like the process that she does. It's like, it seems like it's simple. And then like life, just amazingly just goes, oh, and so I'm excited to bring some of Lou's magic and this work that she's been doing. I'll tell you a little bit about her, but first, just your materials list. So make sure today that you have your art journal, you have any sort of coloring goodies with you, any sort of paints or watercolor brushes, anything like that is good. And beverage of choice, I'm going Wonder Woman. And I'm also drinking my Essence of Wealth. We'll learn about that later. But that's what I'm drinking today. So let's take our 3 breaths to get present, and then we can dive in. Okay? So first, get comfy and open to receive. And with me, I invite you to close your eyes and notice if there's anything from before that's on your mind, any old energy. Let's inhale in, exhale, and let that go. If there's anything in the future that you're worried about that's pulling you from this moment into the future, come back here, inhale in, exhale, release. And our third and final breath, smelling this moment together. Inhaling in, and exhale, release. When you're ready, you can open your eyes with me. So I can introduce you to our beloved Lou. So you already saw Lou, she gave you a wave, but let me tell you a bit about Lou Reed. So she's the founder and CEO of the Energy Medicine Institute, EMI, and Tribal News TV. She's a creator of soul psychology, art psychology, and energy psychology. She kind of mashes her stuff in there all together. So EMI is an online campus for all things like regular schooling. As she says, all things regular schooling, forgot to tell you, right? So a place where your ancient wisdom, those old teachings meet modern science, so that you can have training that allows you to create what you want to create, right? Creating all the things that you've been wanting to do, but you've been stuck before, right? So they work with your mind, your body, your soul, and create these connections, right? So Lou likes to combine writing and art and energy to align the 3 levels of consciousness, bring you back into alignment with you, right? That unique part of you, right? So in the last 2 decades, Lou's guided thousands of creative warriors around the world to come alive, reignite passion. Through teaching, she's done sold out events. She's been sought after for her online training. And so we get her today, but all of her energy students have had her, and she's been the best kept secret. When I found Lou, I was like, oh my gosh. But she's entering into the online world. And so watch out, folks. You'll be like, I knew Lou. So welcome, Lou.
Hi, Amber, and welcome to all your beloveds. I'm just so honored to be here and be able to share my medicine with your tribe. Thank you for the invite.
So Lou and I, we've known each other now, it's been just over a year, right, Lou?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Lou and I, we are vision buddies. And so we meet weekly and we hold vision for each other. And it was this strange way of things that aligned us through a similar community, the Color Woman School and Intentional Creativity. And we met each other, we're like, oh, I was like, oh my gosh, Lou, I love you, but this is what I feel like Lou's magic place is that she is able to connect in with energy, right? Into intuition, into that other place that for many women who are kind of living the regular life, right? Living in the regular world, we miss it, right? We miss the magic of our intuition, of that deeper space. And so Lou, she has all these amazing, she's been teaching your schools are all over, yeah? All over Australia, her energy, her institute. So this is like ways for you to tap into that other side instead of, you know, that part of your head that just kind of goes on your running to-do list, or like, you know, whatever you think you should be doing. Like Lou has these ways to help you tap into that other side to create more of a full, whole way of living instead of what you might be living right now. And so I think that we're going to dive in and kind of look at a little bit that right today.
Yeah. So Energy Medicine Institute was created years ago from a near-death experience that I had. And what I remember is it felt like I was falling back into something. And I was me, but I was connected to all that is, was, and ever will be. I was expanded. And the incredible bliss that came with that. So after that experience, I was really curious as what happened and why can't I have that feeling in this lifetime when I'm alive rather than when I passed. And so I started exploring ancient wisdom, science, and what I found is that our 3 levels of consciousness speak in different languages. And when we communicate with them in the language that they speak, then it connects our individual mind. And as soon as we do that, we have access to the universal mind. And that's that place where, you know, have you ever been doing something and it felt like 5 minutes and you looked at your watch and it was 5 hours and you think, oh my goodness, what happened? Or you think of someone you haven't seen forever and all of a sudden you bump into them into the street or they ring you out of the blue. And so that is a universal mind. And what I teach is all about how we can tap into the universal mind and have it as a place that we hang out all the time, and that we can do it by choice, not just on those random moments that happen when we least expect them, but actually live in there consciously. And then
Yes.
we manifest a life and business that we love. Yeah.
I love that. Yes, more of that, please. Because it's like, it's interesting, those moments of like, what you're talking about, I can think of like, times where I felt in flow, or I felt like really guided by spirit, right? And I talk to women, they're like, I just wish I felt that way all the time. And so you're saying, yes, there are ways to do that. And we're going to talk and show you about some of those today. Yeah.
Absolutely. We are going to do that. And so what I found is that through my exploration, wholeness is when I have my needs met. And for me, you know, Maslow's is fantastic, and there's a number of different models you can use out there, but I found Maslow's really worked for me. However, when I did some traditional coaching, they do this whole wheel of life, and it's about the wheel being lopsided, and it just made me feel wrong. So I've created the Flower of Life medicine wheel, where we go around and we explore the different areas of our needs. And when we look at the continuum of each need, from 0 as in not living it at all, and 10 as in living it to its maximum, and they all came into alignment, that took me to that place of bliss, that place of unified mind and in flow. And so what we're going to do today is explore where everybody is at in their life in this current moment. And what I love about the Flower of Life and why I use it is because when I saw areas of my life that were low in a different petal, it made me feel expansive. It was like a bud of a flower opening out and expanding into my pure potential. So I was able to see it in a different way, and I was able to see it through beauty rather than self-punishment of, oh, you know, why have I been living this way for that long? So I really invite everyone to let go of all their old stories and to show up in the energy of playful curiosity and be as rigorously honest as you can on where you're at now, not where you would like to be. Because this is really just, where are we now? It's a snapshot of a moment in time, and it will give you a starting place of the areas that you can work on to unify your mind to drop into flow, because that is the trick to flow. When we unify our mind, something amazing happens. We actually access the collective unconscious, and we get information that we've never had access to before. And generally that's, you know, Einstein tells us that everything exists in the universe, that we're all energy, and that our pure potential exists. It's simply that we have to connect into the frequency of it. So we're not creating from scratch. It's there. It's just us raising to that frequency so that we can allow it to come in. And as soon as we align to that frequency, we drop into flow. the heavens open up and everything falls into place. So what we're going to do is, if you just grab any color, black, white color, it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to walk you through drawing the flower. So what I normally do is put a dot in the middle of the page for those who may be new to drawing. And I simply just bring one petal at a time back into the center. Now, I'm not sure exactly why, but I do the top one first, and then I go down to the bottom. And that sort of seems to give me a bit of a shape that I can work around. And then I'll go to the top corner, just bringing it back into the center. Then I love to come over here because I'm a bit of a balance freak. And then down the bottom, just bringing it back into the center and creating a 6-petal flower. Cool.
Okay, for those of you that are drawing they're upset about your flower not looking right, here, let me show you mine so you don't feel so bad. Ah!
Oh, yes, there's no perfectionism required here. I'm a recovering perfectionist, and it was the best thing I ever did was letting go of perfection. Okay, so now we have our 6-petal flower. What we're going to do is go around the flower and name each petal, and then we'll come back and we'll explore each petal together one at a time. So the first one down the bottom is basic. Oops. And it's a little hard to draw sideways, so bear with me. The next petal is called safety. So write it anywhere you like on your page. I just find it's easier for you to see if I write it in. And then the third one is love and belonging. And then the next one is esteem. Cool. And the next one is beauty. And the last one is self-actualization. Cool. I'm going to invite you to imagine that each petal is actually on a continuum from 0, meaning I don't have it at all, to 10, meaning I'm living my dream. So we just might run around the petals and just write 10 at the end of each petal to remind our subconscious that this is what we're aiming for. But there's no right or wrong here. This is simply a moment in time so that we can get a starting point. Fantastic. Now let's have a look at basic needs. Most people find that obvious, but I'm going to ask you to stretch yourself. So basic needs is generally a roof over your head, meals on the table, clothes. For women, what's also a basic need is sex. And interestingly enough, a lot of women tend to shy away from the sensuality and the sexuality. So when you answer where you're sitting on your continuum of basic needs, I'd love you to explore also, is your sensuality where you would like it to be? Is your healthy, intimate relationships where you would like it to be? What does your ideal basic need story look like? What would you like it to include? And then if you imagine that halfway would be a 5, a quarter would be about 2.5, and 3/4 would be about 7.5. So if you have a little think of your basic need story, are you living in your dream home? Do you walk in your home each day feeling loved and supported and nurtured? So where are you at on the continuum? And then just colour it in. I invite you to be really messy. Let go of what it looks like and just allow it to be whatever it needs to be. Beautiful. So now safety. If safety included you being able to be your unedited true self with every single person in your life, that's a tricky one, because most people go, yes, I'm safe. But I believed I was safe as well. And I had an experience that really challenged me feeling safe in the world. When I was a teenager, I was kidnapped and tortured. And so years later, I was living in Singapore in a 19-story apartment, thinking I was courageous. I was living on the other side of the planet. Here I am living in my dream life. And then a friend said to me, could you house sit my home while I'm in Australia? Sure. And so she lived in a big government estate with a security box at the thing, and it was like 50 rooms and 5 stories. And I house sitted on my own, and I was terrified. I couldn't sleep without the light on. I had to end up getting someone to come and stay with me. And it wasn't until my safety need story was challenged that I realised I had a need to feel safe. And so I was living on a 19-story of an apartment that had 24/7 security. When I drove in, the gate locked behind me. So I'd really love you to consider, what is your definition of safety? And can you be your true unedited self with everyone in your life in every situation? And then just rate where you feel you might be on that continuum of 0 to 10. Quite often we have our safety needs met in unhealthy ways, and that was an unhealthy example for me, and I didn't even know I was living that story. But until we pause and look at what is our definition of safety and expand it into something around being your unedited self, then we're able to start to say, oh, wow, hang on a minute, there's a whole heap of people. I can be safe with my husband, with my children, but I don't feel safe enough to be me when I'm with some of my friends or when I'm out at work. So just mark where you feel that you are at the moment on your safety story. Great. So with love and belonging, if your ideal love and belonging story included feeling loved unconditionally for who you are by everyone, and not just the few safe people. And I'd like you to also consider, what if your love and belonging story included that inner voice that speaks to you 24/7, saying how amazing you are instead of critical? So when you consider that in your love and belonging story, where do you feel like you are on the continuum of love and belonging? Do you have a loving voice in your head that tells you how amazing you are? Do you have your own cheer squad? Do you love yourself? Because really, the external world mirrors back our internal world. So when we can't love ourselves for who we are, then generally that's what shows up. Just colouring that in. The next one is esteem. And interestingly enough, these are in a specific order. It's like when you build one, then you can move into the other. So esteem is around, can you use all of your 8 senses in all areas of your life? Can you speak up when you need to? Can you love openly without the fear of being hurt? Can you show up for yourself in the same way you show up for others? Or do you constantly say yes to everyone, which means you have no time left for yourself? So esteem is really about, for me, balancing my self-love and external love, and showing up for others the way I show up for myself, or even reverse, showing up for myself the way I show up for others. So just leaning in and getting curious around, where are you now in this moment in time around your self-esteem? Perfect. And now let's look at beauty. A beauty is a little bit like self-esteem. Do you have internal beauty? People might be able to see a flower and say that's beautiful, but do you experience beauty through all of your 8 senses? Is your sensuality beauty? Do you feel sensuality? Do you feel beauty through your sensuality, through food, through smell, through taste, through touch, through sexuality? Do you see it as beautiful, or are there areas in your life that you could explore beauty? Yep. Oh, I've got to colour mine in. It's easy. And then I'm going to invite you to consider self-actualization. Now, that's a big one, self-actualization, because a lot of people don't really connect in with the word. But what it means in this context is, are you actively out in the world sharing your medicine with your beloveds? Or are you still at the beginning of your journey and you're leaning in and getting curious around what is your medicine? Or are you halfway through your journey and you know what your medicine is, but you haven't languaged it or unpacked it in a way that you can start to share it with the world? So just curious as to where you are on your self-actualization. No right or wrong, no judgment, no perfectionism required. Just playful curiosity. So now I'm going to invite everyone to just really sit with their image, to stare into it and breathe it in. And just imagine as if it's a radio and you have a volume knob, that you can turn the dial up to really breathing in all your cells, this image of your snapshot of where you're at in this moment in time, and allow it to speak to you. When we spoke about earlier our 3 levels of consciousness, our conscious mind speaks in word, so we've used word. Our subconscious mind speaks in image, so we've used a flower. And our unconscious speaks in symbol, so we've used colour and texture. So we've now brought all 3 levels of consciousness online, and all 3 levels of your consciousness are now considering what this image represents for you. And what will happen is the neural pathways will start to connect, and all of a sudden you'll have memories and like, oh yes, I remember that, or that's right, or you'll have feelings and emotions and sensations. But what I really love you to look at is the coloured parts of your flower represent the percentage of your life that you're actually living in. And the parts of the petals that are not coloured is your pure potential waiting for you to show up and live through it. So there's no right or wrong. This is just looking at how you're a bud of a flower opening out, expanding into your pure potential. It's just information. And hopefully Amber will share hers with us so that we can chat about it a little bit.
I love being your guinea pig. Okay. Yes. Here's my flower.
Wow, beautiful.
Thanks.
And so tell me, what does that flower say to you when you look at it?
You know, when I looked at her, I actually had like more of a felt sensation, right? Like feeling. And I felt like this pulsing, like open.
Yep.
Yeah, and it reminded me of when I was a kid. I used to go to the ocean. We had sea anemones in Northern California. I don't know if you have sea anemones in Australia. Yeah, that like when we were kids, we'd like take the little stick or like rock and stick it in the nail and they go, you know, and they close up and then they like open back up again, like with their tentacles. That's when I did that. That's what it reminded me of that sea anemone. So
beautiful. And so you mentioned the word feeling. And so that tells me that feeling is an important part of your processing information, that feeling is your primary. And so for you to expand, feeling is important. So for you to expand into the parts of your petal that you haven't expanded into, feeling would be a lead for you. So it would be more about, what do I want to feel like more in that area? And then connecting in with that feeling and then starting exploring what actions you could take to include that in your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that. It was really interesting too, and I'm sure, you know, there are other sisters that felt this too, when you were explaining the idea. Like at first I was like when you said basic, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got basic, you know, like food, shelter, right? And then you started like going more and more like your dream home and like all this stuff, like, oh wait, there's more, you know. But I love the idea of there being potential, like this space and room for growth, and almost that like if you had like it all filled out, that'd be like, where are you gonna go now, right? I love it's like,
yeah,
you know, that's it. It's good to have some space.
Yes, and it's a great question too. Where do we go from here? So for me, I love to keep my flower at 8. And I intentionally don't do it at 8 because then everyone tends to copy what I'm doing. So I kind of randomly do them all over the place. But for me, I always love to leave room for mystery to show up. And so I love to work at keeping each petal at 8. But what happens is when I kick into 8, then I align my levels of consciousness and I step into the individual unified mind. That allows me to be whole. When I'm whole, the next step from self-actualization is transcendence. Transcendence is where we move beyond the whole in my near-death experience and I connect into all that is, was, and ever will be. So we don't die, unlike a lot of people had an assumption that when we ascend that we actually have to leave this physical realm, and that isn't, in my teachings, that is not true. What happens is we expand into a place where we are not self-focused, we're other-focused. And so we really step into bringing our medicine into the world and being of service to the world. So that's what happens after we fill our flower. And it just is a natural organic progression. You know, I love Albert Einstein, he's my hero. And he tells us that when we connect in with the frequency of the reality we want to create, it can be no other way. That is not, it's not philosophy, it's actually science. Science tells us that everything already exists. The only thing that's blocking us from connecting with it and living it is our frequency. And so when we meet our needs in unhealthy ways, for me, addiction was a challenge for me for many years. And because I was still getting my needs, but they were met in unhealthy ways, my frequency was really low. And so until I raised my frequency by moving out of shadow into the light and fulfilling my needs in a healthy way, then when I raised my frequency to the level that of my reality I wanted to create. So it's kind of like a radio station. For me, I love to listen to 101.7. So my question would be, when you tune in to your internal terrain, do you hear music of life or do you hear static? So when you're tuning a radio on the exact frequency of the radio station, 101.7, I hear music. But if I drop out of that frequency just a little, then I hear nothing but static. So quite often people are uncomfortable when they're first doing exploration in their internal world because they close their eyes and they go within and all it is static. And sometimes that static can be deafening. You know, have you ever been in a room where there's an air conditioner on and you don't even notice it? But the minute they turn it off, you're like, oh, thank God they turned that off. Man, that was noisy. So it's the same with our internal terrain, that so much can be whirling around inside. And that comes from our wounded stories. As we're growing up, things happen, our inner critic develops, and as we move through life, she's there going, oh, don't be doing that, and you know, you're too fat, or you do this, or you do that. That drops our frequency and stops us from connecting into the pure potential that already exists. And so this, yep.
Yay. Yes. Okay, so for women to connect to how, so here I'm hearing, okay, I know where I'm at. I want to tap into my frequency. Like I want to, how do we get into that frequency that we want to be at, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so, Amber, I'd love to invite your beloveds to join me in a 12-month quest where we deep dive, and it's a free gift. It's valued at $2,000. And what happens is you come on over and we walk the Shiro's journey, or the hero's journey, which is 12 steps. And we spend a month on each step and we deep dive into it. And the first week we explore your stories that you're currently living. And then week 2, we dive into the conscious mind through writing, and we do a journeying and a journaling to just explore the current story, how you developed, where it came from, and what you might like it to be. And week 3, we then deep dive into an art prompt where we explore through the subconscious mind, through image, starting to reshape your current story into your self-actualized story. And then in week 4, we move into an energy prompt where we integrate all 3 levels of consciousness, bringing that area of your life into the unified mind, tapping into the universal mind. And then we do that every month for 12 months. And the great thing about the Shiro's journey is I find it's the cycle of life. Quite often we get stuck in places and we don't know that we're stuck and we don't know what the next step is. So once you've done the Shiro's journey, those 12 steps are the 12 steps that we move through the rhythm of life. And so it'll help you understand, for example, the first step is ordinary world, which is what we're exploring today. Where am I now? And the next step is call to adventure. And you've just had a really big call to adventure in Hawaii at the moment, where the volcano has literally taken away people's homes and life overnight. And so a call to adventure is something that upsets the status quo in that area of your life, that makes you pause and rethink where you're at. And then there's that reluctant at first where it's like, oh, I kind of feel the need, but the pain of change is greater than the pain of staying the same at the moment. And so we go through this reluctant, and a lot of people get stuck there. And then there's this meeting a mentor or someone that will challenge your way of thinking to expand your thinking so you can start to do things differently, which I'm hoping that the quest can be that for a lot of women, to really help walk them through and show them a different way of living. And so there's these 12 steps, and every single thing, every experience we have in life, we move through these cycles. And so deepening your connection with where you're at, where you're getting stuck, what the next step is, and what tools can I use to move forward. And that's the purpose of the quest, to introduce energy medicine to those who are new to it, and see how it's a really practical way to live. It isn't some woo-woo thing you read about or watch on TV and then you sort of park it. It's something that you can bring into your day-to-day life.
Okay, so I don't know if you caught this, everybody, but so Lou and I, we've been cooking up something. We're like, okay, what can we make that was really amazing? Because, you know, part of our vision isn't just for you to come to the retreat and be like, okay, great, I learned that, right? Another thing that you learned and don't do anything with. But Lou's program, she takes you through, like I heard, like each of those pieces, talk to your subconscious, talk to, like, you know, so all that self-sabotage stuff that you do, like we're addressing those things in different ways. She is giving you her year-long program. Okay, so I'm just being really clear here. Like, this is a year-long program that people pay $2,000 for, that, you know, we were talking and I was like, I can't believe that you're going to give this to her. Like, I've never even ever had anyone be this generous ever before. So please click the link below and sign up and like watch your life change. I'm just like, it's like, it's huge. It's huge. So Lou, thank you.
You are so welcome. I'm so passionate. We are our own guru. The time of the lone wolf is over. It is time for women to come together and collaborate. And through collaboration, even though we're different, even though we have different medicines, even though we have different stories, even though we have different economic backgrounds, it's irrelevant. When we come together and we collaborate, that's when the medicine comes into the world. And so I was so excited when Amber asked me to come and speak to you guys. And I'm like, what can I do that will help bring sustainable change, not just to you, but when you live it for a year, you start to model a different way of being to your friends and your family and your community. And that's when we get sustainable change.
Here, everybody. So this is what I'm wanting. So Lou's talking about this flower thing. Sorry, flower of life, flower thing, and how we're expanding. But what I loved was that piece about really expand is about other focused expansion, right? So I know, and Lou knows, that the more that you take care of yourself and you nurture yourself and like do the healing work, do whatever needs to, you know, happen for this to happen, we start to like do this, you know, which is like, I can't, there's too much going on, to like doing this, to like, oh, I was where you were, let me help you, right? It's like, it's such a natural progression. And so I'm excited. Talking about Women Unleashed, we're like unleashing the unleashing, right? It's like, all right. So I would love to see in the Facebook group, share, right, Lou? Yeah. Share your flower images, share what came up for you as far as like this conversation about aligning your frequency, where you're noticing you're at right now. And don't forget to grab the free gift. So thank you again so much, Lou. This has been amazing.
My pleasure, and lots of love to you and your beloveds, and just sending healing and love and light to Hawaii at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I know we have Women Unleashed sisters all over Puna, that side, Hilo side, so we're loving you as well. So Much aloha, ladies, and we'll see you at our next session.